Welcome to the Writing Biz. Today I have John DeDakis as my guest. John spent 25 years at CNN, serving as a senior copy editor for the Situation Room with Wolf Blitzer, where he gained a unique perspective on storytelling in the writing business. He's the author of the Lark Chadwick Mystery Suspense series. Beyond writing his own books, he operates a coaching and editing business, and he teaches writing workshops. He's the host of his own podcast, One to One with John DeDakis. So I'm really glad to have you here today, John. Thank you so much for agreeing to do this interview.
Thank you, Laura.
Now, I do have some questions lined up, but one of the first ones I want to ask you about is what about the experiences that you've had in your life? How have they influenced you, not just as an author, but in your own writing business and having a successful business?
I think that when we're talking about writing, I think to be a good writer means you need to know yourself. And the better you know yourself, the better you'll be as a writer, because you'll be coming from a place of personal authenticity. And we all have plenty of experiences in our lives based on the conversations we've had, the experiences that we've had, the books we've read, the movies we've seen. All that stuff is bubbling under. And when you write, it's like dipping a straw into your subconscious, and you ask the what if questions, and you start to listen to the voice that shows up. And so writing is like dipping a straw into your subconscious. You ask the questions, they show up, and they come through your fingers and onto the page. And so what was my experience is really accessible for anyone. It's just that in my experience, I've had, grief and loss, and also plenty of success in journalism and in writing as well. And so it's a jumble. And so we draw from the good and the bad in our lives. And I think that's true for anyone.
I think that's true for any field that we're in.
Exactly.
And the way that we communicate with people and the way we present ourselves, and also what we take out of experiences that change us fundamentally,
Right.
hopefully to make us better people.
The choice is ours.
Yeah, isn't it though? So all this experience that you have, so you're teaching now, which is just an amazing thing. I'm a big fan of teaching. That's why I do the podcast, is because I want people to learn how to run their businesses better. But what do you get out of the teaching? I mean, like, as far as who you are, what does it bring to you as a person? And what do you feel you give to the students?
I'm glad you asked the question that way, because what I get out of it is not a lot of money. I mean, there is some sort of financial, there's a financial reward, but I think what's even more rewarding is the connection that I can have with other people. And I especially like connecting with people who have a desire to write, but don't feel they have the ability, or they feel they have the ability, but they're just overwhelmed by the process, and they don't understand all the moving parts. So what's gratifying is to be able to connect with people and help them see that what they desire to do is really accessible and is really possible.
So on that, let's go back to editing for a little bit. So if a novel, we're going to use novelists as an example. We can use nonfiction if you prefer, but I'm going to say novelist. A novelist comes to you, they have worked really hard on this book, and they need an editor. What is the first things you ask them, and how do you help them through the process? Because it can be difficult, I know, as an author, being edited.
Right.
We don't want that. But yeah, so tell me about it. Tell me about I've talked to so many editors, and they have so many different processes that I'm always interested to find out how you work. So go ahead.
Well, the editor-writer relationship is a relationship. It's a conversation, and it's important for me to get a better sense of where the person is in terms of the process. Do they understand the business? Do they understand storytelling? What is do they want to get traditionally published? Do they want to get an agent? Or are they more interested in self-publishing or publishing with a hybrid publishing company? And so it's always important for me to get a better idea of what their goals are. But no matter what their goals are, there are certain fundamentals that are involved in the writing process. And a lot of people, because they're not necessarily familiar with a long form fiction project or nonfiction for that matter, um, they're not they make a lot of rookie mistakes, I guess you could say. And so, part of it is just it's teaching. It's letting them know, no, this is the way it has to be done. This is the way that is spelled. Um, and part of it is subjective. I mean, a story can be told a gazillion different ways. The question is what works, and what works for me may not work for someone else. And so I'm, often when I'm making suggestions on changes, these are suggestions, and I tell them why I think it should be changed. But in the end, it's their choice because it's their story. And so it's very much a two-way street. And you're right. It's not fun to be edited, especially if you've been working with this manuscript for, months, years, even. The more deeply involved you are with it, the more connected you are with it emotionally. And so when someone comes along and says, "Well, that's not working for me," I mean, that can be, a stab in the heart. And so it's you have to be you have to say what you mean without being mean when you say it. And so I try to find ways to diplomatically and sometimes humorously, do some guiding. But you can't please everybody, and so
I'm sure it's a struggle sometimes as an editor when people bring you the work initially because a lot of people have these ideas for stories in their head and it, maybe a wonderful idea, but they are not good at the mechanics of building
right,
that story.
right.
And so then they go to an editor and an editor's like, well, this is, the premise is there, but you need to go back and learn how, tell a story. That's a hard thing to say, but
Yeah, it
it
really
needs to
is.
be
It really
said.
is. Right. It does. And a lot of times the people who come to me have gone to writers' conferences, they've taken classes, and so they really do have an understanding of the fundamentals. And so it's easier to edit them. And I work with people at all levels. There are some people who are very well advanced. There are some who have come back to me a couple of times and they've gotten better over time. And there are some who are, blank slates basically, and they're just taking a look at it. And of course, there are different types of edits. If a person is not a real experienced writer, my suggestion is don't hire me to do a deep dive copy edit because that's very time consuming. Consequently, it can be expensive. And my suggestion is let me see what the story is. How does the story work? Because I'll be able to identify a lot of problems that way without getting into the weeds with
It's
semicolons and
more,
things like that.
like a developmental
A
editor
development
where,
developmental
yeah,
edit as opposed to a deep dive copy edit.
yeah, I agree with that. I'm working on a 5 book series and I'm much happier with books 2 and 3 than I am with one. So I'm in having to rewrite one, which is a nightmare. I'm just really struggling with it. I
Mm.
have to really sit down and just start from scratch, like
But the but
completely
but the thing
outline
that's
it.
significant, the thing that's significant is that it needs work because you've got more experience now and you're being honest with
Right.
yourself about how it holds up to what you consider to be the gold standard of writing.
I learned a lot during that first book that
No.
I didn't repeat those mistakes so much in the second and third. But
Yeah.
we'll see when I take it to a developmental editor because I am definitely doing it on the first book. I'm sure I'll do it on the on. But the first book I have to because if I don't have that first book right, the other ones are going to be in its shadow, and I don't want that.
Well, I mean, if you're trying to get traditionally published, you may never get that book. You may never get to books 2 and 3 because book 1, becomes stillborn.
Yeah, I'm not sure about traditional publishing.
Do you mind if I turn the tables for a second? Help
Sure.
help me understand what your thinking is in terms of being doubtful about trying to get traditionally published.
Don't know if I have an answer for you, except that I would have to have somebody read my book and go through it, such as a developmental editor, before I even start my brain on that kind of process. I think
Yeah.
that's the best answer I can give. I've studied the benefits of both. That's my answer. I have to be sure that it has a chance that somebody would look at it seriously before.
Well, right. And
That.
I mean, if you want to get a book published in this day and age, that's not a problem. If you want to get it traditionally published, that's more of a challenge because there are like,
Right.
10,000 books a day that are being published, and acquisitions agents and agents are getting queries from about 150 people a day. So
Yeah.
but if you are real serious about your craft, that will bring your writing to a professional level.
I'm also in a saturated genre because I do like a romancy romantic fantasy fiction.
Yeah.
So
Romanticy.
romantic, so it's that's a complication with a traditional publisher as well. I'm trying not to think about it. What are you making me think about it for?
Because that's what I do.
Yes, it is. I guess it is. So let me ask you some questions about your series. So let's talk about you as an author.
Sure.
So tell me about your series, when you started writing it. Has it been a long process or something you just kind of put yourself through quickly? And how did you face publishing your work?
Well, I started writing fiction when I was at CNN, writing nonfiction, although a lot of people would say, well, you were at CNN, you were writing fiction the whole time. But I needed a creative outlet because they made me an editor, and that was tedious. I'd been a reporter, and I needed a creative outlet. So back in 1994, I started teaching myself how to write fiction. And it took 10 years to get the agent that I've got. Uh, the manuscript went through 14 major revisions, and my agent is the 39th agent that I queried. We're still together after 20 years and six novels with a seventh on the way. And so it was a long process, but I felt that I could get published traditionally. The manuscript kept getting better, and I kept being hopeful that that it would land, and it did. Even though I had self-publishing in the back pocket as a possibility, and this was 20 years ago when self-publishing wasn't nearly as ubiquitous as it is now. So, I write as a woman, 20 something young woman. I'm neither. There, you can go there if you want. There's probably a 12-step program for that. But uh, it's the same protagonist and same helper character through all 6 novels. And that's been an enjoyable experience. And uh, it I'm not under the gun to write a novel every 9 months or anything like that. It usually takes me one every 2 years or so. I've got procrastination nailed. That's part of the process. And
I guess
I should mention too, I didn't really mention this. They are mystery suspense thrillers, and journalism is a backdrop of all of them because you write what you know. I was in journalism for 45 years, covered the White House when Reagan was president, was at CNN 25 years. And grief and loss are also subplots because the very first book, Lark, my protagonist, finds the body of the aunt who raised her from infancy, and it's based on my sister's suicide in 1980. And so,
oh, wow.
grief attaches itself to Lark as she goes forward in the series.
I have a book. I've mentioned this before on the podcast, but I have a book that I started years ago, and it's really good. I'm going to say that out loud. It's really good.
Good.
I'm stuck halfway through it. And the reason
Mhm.
I'm stuck is because it is about a little girl who is murdered.
Yeah.
And the middle part is her funeral. And I'm having just being a mom and a grandma
Yep.
emotionally, it just gets me every time so I've tried to write around it, but I'm not that type of person. I'm a linear person.
Yeah. Well, can I make a suggestion? Because this comes up a lot
Absolutely.
in my teaching and my classes and stuff. Look, our society tries to get people to anesthetize the pain. And as writers, and as journalists too, it's, I think, important to move toward the pain. It's painful, but I think that will make your writing more authentic. And it will not only be a catharsis for you, but I think it'll also lance a boil emotionally for your reader as well. Sure, it's going to be hard. And when I wrote Bullet in the Chamber, my fourth novel, which was influenced by my son's death in 2011 of a heroin overdose, I cried the whole time I wrote it. I still cry when I read parts of it. And, but crying is okay. It's healthy. It's an emotional safety valve. And I wish more
I agree
people
with that.
did it. So I would encourage you to go there, but be gentle with yourself and give yourself plenty of time. You don't have to rush the process. But my
Right.
hunch is that it'll be a better story.
I think that you're right. And I think that's the way to think about it in my head
Mhm.
is stepping into it. And
Yeah.
yeah, I'll give that some thought, John. Thank you so
Okay.
much because that really is um, very good advice.
Thank you.
Very good. Yeah, because everybody who's read the beginning part of that book has been just like, this is so good. So I have to do something with it. Okay, so now here's another question. Like you said, with the teaching, you don't make lots of money. Um, one of the things that I encourage authors, and I hear so many times other authors encourage authors, is to have a variety of income streams
Yeah.
so that you do have a good living, but you're able to still do the things that you love.
Yes.
So maybe, yeah. So tell me, if you don't mind me asking, I'm not asking for numbers or anything, but how
Sure.
have you done that? Um,
Oh, that's an excellent question. And I mean, come on, I was a journalist for 45 years, so that means there's no business involved as far as being a reporter is concerned. I just never thought about it in terms of being a business. And so I've been learning as I go. And I think that I just fall into things. And I think part of it is it's important to do what you're good at and what you love. And when you do those things, then the income and the money will show up. Just to give you a couple of quick examples, I was still at CNN in Atlanta. I think I was still working on writing an early draft of Fast Track, which was my first novel. And one of my colleagues had a memoir that she was working on and hired me to edit it. And I'd never edit. I mean, I was an editor, but I was not a book length editor. And she paid me. She didn't pay me a lot. I didn't charge a lot because I didn't know if I knew what I was doing. And apparently she was happy because she brought the rewrite back to me and all of that. And so gradually, the very first thing was learning to be a manuscript editor. I would go to a writers conference when my first novel came out, and once you're traditionally published, you do have some credibility. People seem to think you know what you're doing. And, there was this guy who comes up to me and says, "Here's my 150,000 word tome. Give it a quick read and tell me what you think." Well, with me, there's no such thing as a quick read, and it needs work isn't going to be that helpful. So that's when I started to monetize it. And by this time, I was able to charge a little bit more. And, you by trial and error, I became a better manuscript editor. And then in conversations with my wife, she suggested that I should do coaching as well. And, people can put me on a retainer. And so I'm basically responding to their questions on an as needed basis. They pay me a certain amount of money for a certain amount of time, but they can use the time strategically based on what they need me to do. Do they need me to read a chapter? Do they just need me to hold their hand and give them a pep talk? Whatever it is.
Right.
Um, and then and then I put together writing classes that I teach online and before COVID in person to a lot of these writing centers. There's the Writers Center in Bethesda, Maryland. There's the Loft in Minneapolis, the Muse in Norfolk. And so I put together, like hour-long writing classes, and then I do these at writers' conferences. And so the more experienced I got as a writer, the more experienced I got as an editor, the more I went to writers' conferences and became aware of the other people who are trying to do the same things. I basically was able to expand my reach and offer more services to people who are out there. So now I'm a writing coach, a manuscript editor, a writing teacher. I do have a podcast. I'm not trying to monetize that, but it helps people get their book out there, and it also, gives me a little bit more visibility. And probably the most recent thing, and I'll shut up because I feel like I'm talking too much. Um,
You're not.
the the most recent thing I discovered is that this I've known for a long time, and that is I'm a slow learner. And this time, what I learned was that over 20 years and 6 novels, all dealing with grief and loss as a subplot in one way or the other, I realized that I've learned how to help people use writing as a way to heal from grief. And so now I do keynote addresses to grief organizations, writing groups, and teach manuscript writing that's geared toward healing from grief. It's a more specialized kind of thing, so that it's not just geared to the writing community, but it's geared to a much wider audience. And who knows where it goes from there.
So interesting. And I mean, overall, it's just your love of writing in the written word that has led into this life that I'm sure that it sounds like, since you're doing so many things kind of in the same ballpark, that you're living the life that you wanted to live.
Oh man, I
Yeah.
really am. I'm living a life that I never knew existed. I mean, I wanted to be, well, before I became a journalist, I was going to be president of the United States. And um, I mean, for the good of the country, I went in a different direction and chose journalism instead. So when I went into journalism, I wanted to cover the White House for CBS News. So I, still had that desire. I ended up covering the White House, but not for CBS. But the point is that the goals shift over time. And I guess the point I was going to make is that it's not just the written word, because we are connectors, and part of the stories that we tell have to do with people in relationship with each other, whether those relationships are good or, in the case of mysteries and thrillers, not so good. And so, being a human being means, being able to write, but it also means to be able to communicate and interact on a personal level as well. And that's where the coaching and the teaching come in. So if anything, what I'm discovering is sort of, and this leads to what you observed, that I'm really enjoying what I do. It's because I'm basically using all of the gifts I've got, all of the skill sets are coming into play, including being in personal relationship with other people, through writing and talking.
That's I had I had a lot of health issues, but it started with a major health crisis years
Mm,
and years ago.
mhm,
And I'm not a spring chicken,
mhm.
but it
Me,
that
me
crisis
neither.
that crisis made me really stop and think. At the time I still had kids at home. I had my grandson lived with me. Um, there were 5 people in my house that depended on me.
Yeah.
So I had to figure out, what am I going to do going forward
Hmm.
to reinvent myself? And so that's what I had to do. And now much like you, I'm in a position now in my life to where I'm just reaping what I've sown
Yeah.
and doing not what was kind of expected of me, but what I
Right.
really and truly love to do. And it's talking to people like you. It's being involved with other writers and publishers and understanding the process and learning. And that's just such a huge thing in my life. It's just constantly being able to learn. And
And I would imagine a lot of it was trial and error. Am I right?
oh yes, oh yes, yep. I have my own business now that basically I have two pillars right now. One is I produce podcasts for other people, and the other one is web design.
Oh,
And it took me a while to get there. I tried several things. I did a lot of content writing. I did a lot of I did I don't even know how many hundreds of articles I've written for in content writing, people all over the world.
mhm.
Um, and then I did graphic design, but just trying all those skills still come into play though with
Right.
everything that I do.
Right.
So it's really it's it's a good place to be.
Sure.
It really is.
No wasted time on the way because
Yeah,
whether it's victorious or a failure, you're still learning.
yeah, and that's the thing. I think that the people that uh truly find what they're supposed to be, it's because they are open to learning.
Yeah. Yep.
If you're not open to learning, you're just going to kind of sit where
Well,
you
and
are put
fear
down.
fear can be a big impediment.
It can. It can. John, I've taken up enough of your time today. I can't tell you how much I appreciate that you came on. Advice that you gave me is going to see me forward, I do believe. But
Thank
thank you
you.
so much.
You're
Yep.
welcome,
And
Laura.
yep, it was a pleasure. Maybe we'll do this again sometime.
That'd be good. Thanks for very much for the opportunity. It was good to talk to you.
You can learn more about John and his endeavors at johndedakis.com, and I'll share his socials in the show notes. To learn more about the podcast, visit thewritingbiz.com, sign up on the website to be the first to learn about new episodes, and much more. Don't forget to hit the like, share, and subscribe. Until next time, take what you've learned and put it to work in your own writing biz.